Do I feel like there's pressure? Nah, but I know it is. Like, there's definitely pressure, but I don't feel it. Man. I'm just going there hoop.
7th Devontae Woods, born August 7th, 1998. So many things has to happen and work well together to make it to the NBA. Of the most important, timing, along with the right person, one that's able to deal with the expectations and the pressure that comes along with having your name mentioned among the best amateurs are factors that don't come by too often. Today's feature may have been the biggest victim of these two things, along with the reasons we'll speak about today that took him from being called the best 14-year-old in the country, signing to a top 3 college program in North Carolina, winning a national championship as a freshman, to drastically underachieving in 3 years there, transferring to a smaller school in South Carolina, then underperforming there as well, and transferring once again to a low-level Morgan State for a graduate basketball year and his 6th spent in college, and none of them suggests he has a future in the league and slight chance of even having an extended career overseas. This is the furthest cry from expectations you would think would happen back in 2013, where a YouTube hoop mixtape made him one of the first viral sensations in basketball. His hoop mixtape has now surpassed over 16 million views, making it the most watched hoop mixtape of all time. At 14 years old, 7th Woods was far ahead of his competition, and as an athlete, I think it may have been the first time I saw a guard 14 years old do what he was doing. Timing was on his side at that point, as YouTube was still less than 10 years old and hoop mixtapes even younger. When that mixtape dropped, 7th Woods says it changed his life. His games were never not sold out after that, and every school began recruiting him. All because the sensation a less than 3-minute highlight video could and can still bring a prospect. The attention he began to get was comparable to what you may now see in Mikey Williams, who's pretty much in the same situation, being watched and evaluated at an extremely young age. Only Mikey can profit off that in this day and age, with there being no restrictions on using your likeness to gain monetarily. Mikey became the first U.S. high school player to sign a major sneaker deal, inking with Puma, so now even if things don't go as planned on the court, he'll still be able to say at least something came from it. All because of being in a different era. All that aside, 7th Woods, besides having one of the coldest basketball names, had the perfect start to the NBA journey, and at the time, the skills and confidence to take it all the way. But for these reasons, he's far left behind his class and a dark spot for any high school player aspiring to be a YouTube sensation. What happened? Let's talk about it. It's your boy JC Stunted Growth. Let's get it, man. Take a minute to like, subscribe, and comment on who I should do next. You can also send a super thanks by clicking the button below. Enjoy the video. 7th Woods is a 6'2" combo guard from Columbia, South Carolina that wasted no time making his mark as one of the premier high school players in the country as just a freshman. To the eyes, his game had everything you would want from a prospect with superstar ceiling. At the time, he seemed big at the position for his age, and even going back to watching him face off against Dennis Smith Jr., he seems way more mature physically, like he was at least a level above DSJ. In that game, he scored 42 points to Smith Jr.'s 20, and sure to be a star. At Hammond School, he started on the varsity team in the 8th grade. Looking back at when I was in the 8th grade, I couldn't imagine that. He averaged 14 points a game as well. By the end of his sophomore year, he was the South Carolina Boys Player of the Year. He had a solid junior and senior seasons, although not quite as expected seeing what he did prior to, but by then he already had offers to go to the biggest schools, even though he may have been better served at a smaller school out the gate based on his lack of development since he went viral. Stunt number 1, overwhelming expectations. 7th Woods' mom says they as parents wanted to shield their son away from the attention as it could be too much for a child. She also says that there was no way of stopping the attention, and that's very true. YouTube made it to where anything can go viral, and going viral means a lot monetarily, so nowadays you see cameramen lined up at high school games trying to break their own 7th Woods. When Hoop Mixtape did so in 2013, it created overwhelming expectations that 7th now admits were too much for him. I knew they were, but didn't at all know it was this bad. He says because of the hype surrounding his name, he would try his hardest to be perfect. He felt like he had to be, or people would say he isn't that good. Every mistake made, he would think about it too much and it affected his play. This could explain why as a junior and senior in high school, his play didn't evolve into the player he was thought to be by then. 20 as a sophomore, 16 as a junior, and 18 as a senior. From best 14-year-old in the nation to a 4-star rating and 59th best player in the country. As the pressure and expectations rose, Woods didn't with it because mentally he just wasn't chosen. An underrated factor in making it to an elite level of anything, especially basketball. It's one of the things I saw and liked about Dennis Smith as opposed to Woods in high school. Smith Jr. had a chip on his shoulder and wanted the challenge. Some, like 7th Woods, may receive the challenge instead of initiating it, and those players, when things start not to go right, can shut down or break mentally. Woods began trying to live up to people's expectations of him and couldn't shake that, he says. Things only got much worse on the next level. Stunt number 2, going to North Carolina. 7th Woods should have never went to UNC, although that's a lot more clear in hindsight than it was back when he seemed a perfect fit in Carolina blue. As a viral sensation the level he was, telling yourself you might be better suited at a smaller school may never cross your mind. You're the name everyone was talking about at one point. It didn't end like it should have in high school, but the hype lasted long enough for North Carolina to want your services and everyone to expect you to sign with a major program. But from day one, 7th Woods was exposed as just not good enough. His game seems like it almost stopped developing at all since going viral. Even back then, his jump shot was much smoother and didn't have the hitch in it even like it does now. Like he took steps backward every year instead of forward. In his case, it may be the most steps backwards I've ever seen. In 3 years at UNC, he started in just one game and averaged just 8.7 minutes a game. Not only was his game not up to par, but he wasn't getting opportunities, which is expected on a level of UNC when you aren't performing. Kobe White even came in and went lottery right under Woods' nose, all because of the level of competition. It may hurt your pride or ego, but as a prospect, don't go to a school that won't be genuinely invested in you getting to the next level. North Carolina saw he wasn't that good and left him there to rot his potential away. Not at all their fault, because what else are they supposed to do when the player falsely advertised isn't good enough? Let's say he goes to South Carolina initially, or Morgan State where he was last and averaged 20 plus points a game there. With his hype in high school, he would have had a much better chance than he did going to UNC. Stunt number 3, one specific thing. As a prospect, my word of advice to you would be to make sure you have at least one specific skill you're always one of, if not the best at, on the level you're at. Just one thing. 7th Woods, for so many reasons, didn't have that one thing. He was listed at the dreaded combo guard position that was created to suggest really that the player is in a way still confused or confusing as to which position he'd like to focus on, or as we used to say, a tweener, in between, not specific or suited to fit one position. This was seen as sort of a negative until they revamped the name into combo guard, and for 7th, that didn't work. You could say in his class it didn't work at all. He was a very poor shooter on the college level, even when moving down to the lowest Division I level in his 6th year. He couldn't average more than 5 points a game, at least 3 assists, or even a steal a game. He shot 20% from 3 for his career, 65 from the foul line. For a professional team looking at that, they may say, well, what does he do? Sadly and shockingly, not enough. All in all, mental has to be the reason 7th Woods had such a huge fall in potential. He had all the skills at one point, then they all seemed to have just disappeared. He wasn't able to get it done after the maximum years of college opportunity, and now that the NBA is certainly not in the future, what will become of 7th Woods, the high school prodigy, from here? Salute, much respect, but for these reasons, his growth was stunted. It's your boy JC, Stunted Growth, and I'm out.